in actual fact, it is 10:15, so let's get going. Rob, first of all, I want to introduce you, my wonderful friend, Rob Robertson, whom you can see on the screen there, at least you probably can. And he is my colleague from a long time past through the New Zealand Professional Speakers Association. Rob, I'm just thinking, should I be putting on my earbuds? Would that make it a bit easier for everybody, do you think?
Whoops, I'll turn off my mute. It's sounding good from my end.
Okay, I'll pop my earbuds in and just see whether the little microphone here makes it any better. Experience. Okay,
Brilliant.
the buds in now. How does that sound, folks?
Yeah, sounding good. And there is a question in chat or a comment from Kim saying that she met you on the train, or is it just gone here? So I'm just monitoring the chat today. That's my role essentially, and just helping out.
Yeah, oh, well, it's great. Oh, so I met you on the train, Kim. Well, it was very nice. Thank you.
Met on a train going to the chateau is what Kim is saying.
One. Oh, hi, Kim. Oh, wow. And there's all sorts of folks there that I've met in different places as well. So a little bit about me and how I get to be doing this very, very briefly is that I'm an ex-librarian in my early career. So things like having tidy shelves and stuff like that was fairly, shall we say, basic for me. But in actual fact, there were, nonetheless, I still ended up with piles of paper in my home office. And it was quite some years on in my life, and I've been doing time management training for a little while, when I came across an article that made me realize that I could improve my efficiency at my desk. And so that's how this particular topic today really actually got started. Just before I go further into it, let me give you a couple of little explanations about the way Zoom works. And Rob, if you would jump in if I forget any little things. Over on the, probably on your top right of your screen, you've got a little, an opportunity to change the view. I thought we weren't going to be seeing the faces of people when I had set it up that way so that it wouldn't be too many distractions, but in actual fact I can see quite a few smiling faces. So it's over to you. You can control how you see it. Rob, is there any other way you would explain that?
It's just, yeah, you can alternate between speaker view and gallery view if you want. So that's the control at the top right. Although seeing we've got the PowerPoint, I think that it'll not make a lot of difference, but yeah, I think that's all I need to know.
Okay, fantastic. You are on mute. We will unmute you. Rob is controlling that one. We will unmute.
Sorry, Robyn. I muted everybody and that muted you. So it's my mistake. I've unmuted you now. My apologies.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, well, that's interesting. I'm learning. This is a learning opportunity. I've never done a Zoom meeting with so many people on it before, so this is quite fun. Where was I? Train of thought collection. So, yeah. So what Rob will do is monitor the chat. So if you do have questions, please put the questions in the chat. I will take, each time I take a pause at each different stage, I will get from Rob 3 questions, if there are 3, relating to what we've already discussed, and anything else we'll hold to the end. Hopefully we have time for some more questions at the end, but we have got a lot of content to get through. So if we run out of time on those questions, I'm going to tell you at the finish another opportunity to get together for further questions. And there's going to be lots of information, as you will find as we go through. So now the just shifting a couple of things on my screen so I can see what I'm looking at here. Yeah. So the other thing about my previous life, although as well as being an ex-librarian, the other thing that relates to mess and chaos is that I've raised 6 children. They all came in a 9-year period. So there was a period of my life where I just seemed to be forever in chaos, always rushing around, cleaning things up. So that's enough to tell you about my background. The other thing I want to just share with you in context of this particular topic, sorting out the stuff, is I believe it's the fastest stress reducer in town. It's so stress releasing, actually, when you get rid of the chaos that you're looking at on that screen, for example. I don't know any faster and better way to get things changed. So now let's have a look at what we've got to talk about today. The first thing I want to really say to you is there is no one right way to deal with stuff, in inverted commas. We've got two major types of thinking styles. There's lots of variations within that, but essentially there's no one right way, and I really want to make that key point. For example, the folks who would love the cupboard on the left-hand side of the screen would be what you would call the divergent people. Just making sure I had the words around the right way. The divergent folks, they're the ones that love colour, they love creativity, they're right-side thinkers, they are stimulated by having lots of things going on. So if you're one of those, your office probably reflects that. And don't panic, because I am going to share with you how you can still have an organised space or an organised home or a garage or whatever it is you wanted to work on. You can still be organised within that divergency. The convergent thinkers are more the left brain, the logical, left side thinkers. They wouldn't want to have all these things exposed, like the people who would love the left-hand cupboard. Things will be neat and tidy behind closed doors. They'll have everything pared down, and that makes them feel comfortable. It's really important to recognise that this is a very sensory kind of thing, really, this whole sorting out how you manage your environment. It's very much a feeling thing. It's what looks right, what feels right for you. In a workplace, well, in any place actually, somebody who is a very linear thinker can't cope with mess. They actually won't be able to function correctly. So if you're working or living with people who love things very organised, but you're the opposite way, you could quite well be conflicting with each other. There's a fantastic book that I really want to recommend about this if you are particularly one of those divergent right-side thinking folks. And that's a book, and I will put it in the show notes that I'm going to send to you later on today or early tomorrow, depending how long the recording takes. Rob, are we recording? I hope we're recording. I cannot see whether it's been recorded. I'll leave you, Rob, to just be checking that one for me. There's a book by Anne McGee Cooper called Time Management for Unmanageable People. And it's really helps not only explain the differences, but also how she, as a very right-sided thinker, learnt to work with people who are much more linear thinkers in her company. She was a time management specialist in herself and productivity, and she came up with, she really had to drill down into this topic. So I really recommend that you get hold of Anne's book if that's something that you would really like to know more about. And as we go along, I will give you some examples of the different ways of thinking and how to cope. Because having things creative and lots of things on show it's not wrong, it's just what works for you if you're one of those divergent people. So what do you need for a good experience when you're cleaning out? Whoopsie, sorry. There are two major things. First of all is having the right mindset. So here's a couple of clues. Expect to be tired when you're finished, and it'll be a good tired, because it takes a lot of mental energy if you're not the sort of person that's used to putting things away all the time as you go. And another one is don't try and take on the whole house or the whole office at one hit. I'll give you an example as we go along. Later on, I'm going to talk about Suzanne, who was one of the clients that I worked with years ago. And what I mentioned in context of the energy is when we had sorted out her office, there was one area we didn't do on this one half day that we were working together, and that was her filing cabinet. because by that stage it was too big a job for her to start when she had invested a lot of energy into sorting out the chaos that was her office. One other quick example is very early on when I started doing this kind of cleaning out work, my friend Fran, I decided she wanted me to help her with her home office. And her whole house was actually really messy with lots of things in it, or spread all over the house. And we had to really work hard to keep her to focus. And she would say, oh yes, I think I know where that goes, as we'd pick up something from her office. And she'd run around the house and she'd come back with a whole lot more things. And it would have been so easy to get diverted. So that would be a really important thing, is to do everything you possibly can to focus and stay on task. Now, a couple of other few physical things to watch out for. Allow yourself, this is the physical thing. So you've got the mindset, expect to be tired, but expect to enjoy it as well. The enjoyment of it at the finish anyway, even if you don't exactly like the doings of it to start with. The physical things to watch out for are the turning off your phone or diverting it. If you're working at home, which we're all working from home pretty much at the moment, and if you've got children around, to divert the kids. If you're doing it when you're back at work or you are already in a workplace, don't take visitors or interruptions. Like when I'm working with clients in a corporate environment, I say, get a temp to come in and take the phones so that you can all focus on getting things sorted out. You also need a bit of space to lay out things, and that will become obvious as I talk as to the process, but you need room to do that. Another thing you need is secure destruction bins or shredders. You might not, anyway, you've all been in your own different environments at the moment, because we can't get out and about to go and drop things off or get rid of them very easily. It might be you have to make stacks of things to go out the door at some point. And of course, have plenty of rubbish sacks or boxes or whatever. Get them out of your environment so you don't get tempted to bring them back in again. The last thing to mention is to get assistance, and it's what I would call, if you are the sort of person that struggles, is to get what I call an unreasonable friend, somebody who's going to ask you the hard questions. Let's look at the 4 steps. There are these only 4 things that we need to focus on. Number 1 is the layout and equipment. I'm going to drill down into each of these directly, so I won't talk at length on them now. Layout and equipment, how to set up the systems, or what systems you need set up. You need to sort the stuff, and how to stay organised is the really big one, because so many folks are good at 2 or 3 of those things, but number 4 is often the one that's left out. So what do we need for our layout and equipment? The first thing to do is do an audit on yourself, and whatever room it is that you're looking at, or if it's a whole house or if it's a garage, how quickly can you find things? Pretend you're a visitor. Stand at the doorway of whatever room you're wanting to work on and say, what would a visitor think about this environment? Would they think it's an organised one that I can find, I can see things? Feng Shui, now I'm no expert on Feng Shui, but it really is an interesting science, I suppose, which really talks about the energy of an environment. So and there's lots of other things about Feng Shui, like broken stuff and things like that. But if you stood there at your environment and you said, what does the energy feel like in this space? That will very quickly guide you to the areas that need to be fixed. A couple of other key points here is the space closest to you is your most precious. So the things that you've got in your immediate working area, whatever part of the house or office it is, they are the things that should be really close at hand, and the things you use the least should be further away. Another key point is to create flexible storage, because the only thing you can pretty much guarantee is that nothing's going to stay the same. So be asking yourself what slows you down, and the other thing to consider is, are you using your space efficiently? Now, a few more points on the layout and equipment is, have you got the right gear? So ask yourself, what do I really need? What are the small annoyances? And this is where we come back to Feng Shui again. Again, because Feng Shui is an energy focused kind of a way of thinking, is what do I trip over or have to go around in order to get things? What's in the wrong place? Or, for example, what's interrupting me? A great little story. Craig was on one of my very early Win the Paper War sessions, I called it back then, because my second book is Getting a Grip on the Paper War. And this book had just been launched. I was down in Christchurch, I think it was, and Craig was on one of my courses. He went back to his office after the session and thought, what are the things that slow me down? And he realised that he had to go through every time he wanted to print even one piece of paper, he had to go through an office, past about 2 or 3 other guys working at their desks to get to the printer. There would be little interruptions quite frequently as he was walking past these other people. Sometimes somebody else would be doing a long run at the printer when he got there, or he didn't get there immediately and someone had taken his piece of paper. You can imagine how that would all go. Well, he saw me 9 years later at a conference when I was speaking for the insurance industry, came racing up. He said, Rob, I saw you were on the agenda. So I did a calculation. I wanted to tell you how much money I think I've saved by getting a little desk printer for my desk instead of for the little short runs, instead of rushing backwards and forwards to the printer through that other room. He reckoned he'd saved by that stage at least $20,000. So, and he was an actuary and he'd done all the calculations. So just think about that. Any interruption is going to slow you down. Now, if you're at home, think about it. If you're wanting to tidy up your home office, home environment rather. So the kitchen bench, for example, maybe that doesn't work very well. Or you go out to the garage. What is it? And even if it's an office environment at your home, as much as you can, try and have a dedicated space so you can set things up and you're not having to race around. So the last thing very quickly to mention on this layout thing is be thinking about, I've got VAKOG. This is a bit of an acronym for visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. And I talk about those in more depth in my latest edition of the book I mentioned before, which is now Getting a Grip on the Paper and Email War. So these VAKOG sensory preferences, they will have a big bearing on how we like our environment to be. So what else do we need to think about? What's going to make you feel more effective? Colour, plants, space, all the things you can see there on the screen. Just in reference to colour, I was talking with a friend one day about this office setup, and she took some photos and sent them to me, and here's one of them on the left-hand side with one of her staff. What they did, they were people that were quite visual, again, that sensory thing, the visual sensory, is they liked stimulation, but also it made it more efficient that different people in the firm had different coloured accessories. So the person at this desk loved green, somebody else had purple, there was pink, there was yellow, there was blue. I've got other photos of the different setups. Another advantage of that was that if something went missing, it stood out pretty clearly that you'd pitched your neighbour's yellow stapler or whatever it was. There was a time saving in that regard as well. The desk on the right-hand side, that was Kirsten's desk. She'd attended a webinar with me some years ago. I'll show you later on what her office used to look like and then a different view of it. But the thing I want to highlight there is what made her feel really good and really efficient was a pared down, tidy top of desk, and notice the plant. Because plants will often give us energy too. So you're looking for things that make you feel good. Now, let's go to, I'm going to take a pause now, Rob, if you would like to, are there any questions?
No questions at this stage, all going well.
Oh, great, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll just keep cracking on. But if you come up with any questions as we go, guys, just pop them in the chat and we'll call them out to me when I'm ready for them. So now the next thing we want to talk about is this. So that was the layout and equipment. So setting up a system. First thing is to put like with like. A little story for you. The very first time I did this ever commercially for somebody was a woman called Mary, whom I was doing a bit of part-time work for. And at that stage, I'd gone out of real estate. Hadn't yet realised that this is what I do now and have done for nearly 28 years or so was going to be my future career. It hadn't even dawned on me at that point. I was just looking for part-time work because I had some other things that I was dealing with, and I was doing a bit of clerical assistance for Mary. One day, I said, Mary, where are the stamps? There were the days we sent letters quite often. And she said, well, they'll either be in the box by on the shelf by where you're sitting, or they might be in the filing cabinet, or they could be in the bottom drawer. And immediately I knew we had a problem, because she didn't have one place for everything. She didn't have like with like. And if there's anyone, like there's several keys I'm going to share with you, but this is a big one if you get like with like. So what we did with Mary was we got stuck in and we sorted it out. And I'll talk about the system later on in context of a different person as well. But it was that was the key. So if you find that you've got more than one place for something, you've probably got too many, almost certainly got too many places. The variation for that will be, if you've only got a limited space, you only have what you need at that moment, or what you can use currently. Like for an example would be a big box of envelopes, particularly in the, that's probably a bad example now because we don't use envelopes so much, but I'll say with that one. So I used to have a big box I bought a box of about 500 envelopes, but I didn't need 500 in my desk. I just needed a small amount like that, and I had them in one particular spot, and when that ran low, then I would get some more out of the stationery cupboard. Another key is to get things upright instead of stacked when you're setting up the system. The layout of it's more than layout, it's actually what are the systems so that are going to help you continue to be efficient. When you've got things stacked like that, the minute you have to go and get something off the bottom of the pile, you're not going to put it back where it came from. And you're also, the other thing is, you're more likely to not want to bother to put something away because you have to pull something out in order to do that. So just get things upright instead of flat. The other one I want to share at this point is having a cleanup, an annual sort out, so a purge, because things will just sneak in. With a lot of offices, I say, have a clean up the office day once a year, but it could be any room in the house. When I was raising all those little children, and we were living in quite a small house, I would do a cleanup, a sorting of the drawers every change of season, because I didn't have enough room in the building. Well, I had them tucked away under beds and things like that, but I didn't have enough room in the drawers, I should say, to have all the summer and winter clothes in the drawers that we were using for the children's clothes. So I had to go through them, and that was a space saver. Another quick children's tip, because I may have some parents, imagine I have got some parents on the call, don't have all your toys necessarily on show. So this isn't exactly a purge and throwing things out necessarily, but when you've got 6 kids and they're all not very much different in age, 9 years, as I said, between them all, that's a lot of toys, especially with all the parents and the grandparents and the aunts and uncles and friends that give kids presents. So we would put, and you'd spend hours sometimes putting everything away at the end of the day if you're trying to be tidy. So what my husband and I did was we put half the toys away, put them up in a cupboard where the kids didn't see them, and then every 6 months or so, or 3 months, it might have been, I can't remember now, we would actually change them over. So it was like they had a whole set of new toys. And it just means that you've got less to put away every day. So that was a useful thing. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the desk equipment that's going to help you keep your mind clear. The periodicals boxes. Now, I'm just going to see if I can share. Rob, can you see me? I've turned off my screen. You can see me, can't you?
Yeah.
If I go off screen share, I'm not quite sure whether I lose you. So I'll just see if I can hold it up. Here is an example of a periodicals box. Can you see that, Mark?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So this is an upright one. There is a couple of funny little things about this. A lot of them have the label on the high side, which is the wrong place to be. I mean, it can be there, but it's not the place you write. You want to put your label on, or write on the label at the front, because you want to be able to see what you've got and be able to get in and out of the box really easily. And the key point here is also you've got, I have different categories. This is a project, a book that novel that I've just finished writing. So I've got different categories separated. So this is a way to manage the miscellaneous things. So yeah, it's my Q file, my one Q file. So this is the one that I use on a daily basis, and I just love how it's flexible. You can fold down even, and it's just great. But we'll talk more about that later. Get the right equipment that's going to help you be efficient. A few quick filing tips. We haven't got time today to go into filing in any depth at all, but I'm just going to give you a very few quick ones because again, it's systems. So think about this, that filing is a really important basic management skill. In the old days, people used to have filing clerks, and there are some companies and organisations that still do, lawyers and accountants, and particularly lawyers, because they're dealing with so many files. But there'd be big companies that would do that. I don't believe personally, in most cases, of course there are exceptions, in most cases, having the filing done by somebody else can be a bit of a problem. If it's your own stuff, get into the habit of filing it and knowing where things are going. But there's so much more to say about that one. But the important thing is keeping it as simple as possible. Now, one of the ways to keep things simple is to label everything alphabetically. In most cases, I say if possible here, but that's the simplest if you're looking for a simple one. It depends what you're doing. Like, let's just have an email example here, because these days there's so much less filing because most of us are now quite digital in so many things. So with my emails, for example, with all my clients, I now have, I use folders, and that whole email thing's a bigger topic that maybe I'll do a webinar on some other time. But there is a whole big section in the Getting a Grip on the Paper and Email War about it, if that's what you want to know about. But I have one base folder or top line folder called Clients, and then under that I've got Clients A to E, another folder Clients F to L, then M to S, and comes F, then the rest of it is T to Z. So so that just helps me very quickly go there, and then because it's electronic, you can just do a quick search and very quickly find what you're looking for. But if you're got things at home that you're wanting to file alphabetically is really simple. And this is another little tip, is thinking about how you address an envelope, because people will say, well, I don't know how to label things so that I can find them easily. Think how you address an envelope and reverse it. What does that mean? So with an envelope, you put in name, street, town, or it might be a suburb, town, country. You do the reverse with your filing. So the top line level, word or descriptor is the first one, and then you might put a slash, and then you have the next bit, and so on and so forth. So just think about that one if you get a little bit stuck on filing. A few little tips about filing. You might not need as much space as you think. I've seen some remarkable examples of that with, for example, my friend Evelyn, when I lived in Sydney, got me in one day to come and help her sort of streamline her office. She was living in a really beautiful big villa and had a really huge office, and she had lots of white Eastlight folders all around the room. She was an image consultant, and everything looked immaculate, but she was taking up way too much space with all this stuff because each client was in a separate folder. And so because she had lots of clients, she had lots of files, and she was had lots of shelves, and it was taking up an enormous amount of space. But when she went through and started pruning out, she actually didn't need to keep anywhere near as much information. Not only she improved her environment then, but she continued to eliminate unnecessary stuff. And some years later, still doing the same work, she moved into a small apartment with so much less space, it was unreal, and she looked so efficient and so organised. So that's a little clue. Think about how much space you really need. Another one is the halfway to the file 13. Oh, I love this. File 13, rubbish bin, whatever you like to call it. If you've got just one, I'll just pull out my little folder here. Back of a cute one, grabbed it. So that's my halfway to file 13 file. Anything that I think I might not need again, but I'm not sure and I'm not ready to let it go, you put it in there. Every now and again, you will need something. You just go back, you quickly flick through. Anything you don't need, you dump it. And I find that file never gets very full, but it's got rid of a lot of the miscellaneous paperwork that otherwise has been scattered all over your desk or bench or wherever. Now, if it were the garage, for example, you might have a box, which is I'm not sure if I need these things. Or if it's a kitchen, a lot of us have got a kitchen drawer I'm not sure if I need those. But don't forget to every now and again purge. Now, if you want more about the filing, I suggest you get hold of Getting a Grip on the Paper War. I will say this again at the end, but I've this week for you guys, I've actually reduced that book down. It's a fully revamped book that I rewrote it actually almost extensively last year, and it's now available on Amazon. So it's usually I think close to $5 for an ebook and about double that for a physical book. But it's available just for this week till the 27th of April for only 99 cents. Now, Rob, that's the end of that section before we go to clearing out the systems. Was there a question?
There was a question if we go back to the sensory preferences of the VAKOG. Right. Did you want to expand on that acronym? Was the...
may have already answered that, but I'll go back and just double check. So V is visual. Are you an audit? So what sort of processing? How do you like to receive your information? How do you retrieve something when you're trying to remember something? And this, I could talk extensively on this topic for probably 10 or 15 minutes and barely we're still scratching the surface. So I'll just try and give you a really wee bit summary. If you like to receive things in a visual way, you have to be shown it. How it relates to this context is you need lots of visual prompts or stimuli. So you'll want pictures around, you'll want things looking good, colourful. That's visual. Auditory, an auditory person likes to process information through their ears, but there are two sorts of auditory. There's auditory tonal, that's particularly the ears. Auditory digital is somebody who likes to write things down, and if you don't write them down, you won't remember or you'll struggle to remember. And I myself am actually very strongly auditory digital. You'll get a lot of people who are quite detailed people that will be auditory digital, but you'll know yourself if you can, how you like to retain information. So if you have to write things down in order to remember it, that's what you are. So in the context of this topic, you'll need things around that you can be writing things down on. You'll want a journal or some sort of notebook that you carry around with you so that you don't forget things. You'll certainly have your pencils handy. So that's audit, and it also relates to interruptions. And we talked about interruptions before. An auditory tonal person, so really triggered by sound, they will be very distracted if they've got lots of noise around them. And this is a bigger topic than we've got time to go into today. K is kinesthetic or tactile. And a kinesthetic person will want to have a really comfortable environment. They might not necessarily need it to look good, that's the visuals, but there'll be, they do have to have it comfortable, and they will want it to be tactile. So they'll want things that feel nice in their environment. The olfactory and gustatory, they're a really deep primary, not primary is the wrong word, they're really a sort of deep processing. Olfactory is a sense of, is a sense of smell, sorry. having a mental moment there, sense of smell. So if you really are triggered by the aromas around you, you might want to particularly get into aromatherapy or have burners going. But there's all sorts of elements to that. But that's why real estate agents say put on the coffee pot, bake bread when you're wanting to sell your house. Gustatory, those are the guys that like to graze as they go. They're really strong. You talk about going for a degustation if you're going for a really lovely long meal with lots of little courses. So, and they are not as critical to what we're talking about today, but they're very profound. So is there any other questions, Rob?
That's great. We do have someone else asking a little bit more about that. Just where do they find out more information on that?
Okay. Well, I do talk about that at quite some length in Getting a Grip on the Paper and Email War, and I've given more examples there. And also, actually, I talk about it in another of my books, which you can see. I've got all my books on a separate website, robynpearce.com. So if you have a look there, there's quite a section on that in About Time. And that's subtitle 120 Tips for Those with No Time. So those two places will give you quite a bit more. And just do a Google as well. So it's if you look up VAKOG on Google, you'll find stuff.
Brilliant. We're getting thank yous. Thank you coming in. So that's all for
now. Okay, thanks, Rob. Okay, we'll go on to step 3. So step 3 is clearing up the clutter. What is the process? And here's the big, real hit you with it statement, which a number of you have heard me say before. Every time I say this at a conference, I get people saying, slow down, say it again, say it again. I never quite know whether they're going to hit somebody else over the head with it or whether they're doing it for themselves. But think about this. Every piece of paper, information, or equipment is a symptom of a decision not made or an action not completed. Is it true? You think about that. And I'm going to give you some examples here directly. But if we put something down because we're going to think about where it goes later, I suggest we are deferring decisions. So it's not making a final decision necessarily, but it's moving things on. Let's keep cracking on. So what are the keys for cleaning up the clutter? There are 4 of them. We have to first sort things out. So we have to touch everything. There'll be a whole lot that we dump, we'll be minimizing, and we'll be rearranging. The office that you see there, that was Brenda's office, and she did a webinar with me. And usually I charge for these webinars, but this is my gift to you. It's my pandemic gift is doing this webinar for you. Brenda came on the call with me. She had her office at the time. She was living in Thailand, and that was what her office looked like. It looked really different at the finish. So let's talk into each of the pieces. So sorting or touching everything. I'm going to share with you actually a story about Suzanne. I touched on her before. Suzanne she was the CEO of an organisation in Sydney whilst I was living there, who she had me in for a day's training. At the finish of the day, she said to me, Rob, I'm really frustrated. I've got my office is such a tip. Would you come in and help me sort it out? Her PA heard her and laughed really rudely. She said, she's hopeless. I've tried. Well, it is an interesting challenge for me. So anyway, Suzanne and I made an appointment, and off I get. And actually, I'm going to just take you back to the previous slide because it really relates to this. We get there. Suzanne said as we were going upstairs to her office, it's so bad, Robyn, I'm going to take the day off tomorrow. I'm thinking, she hasn't got a lot of confidence in what we're about to do. Anyway, we get there, and sure enough, it's a tip. She's got things. Her desk was far worse than the one I just showed you a second ago of Brenda's. You could not see the top of it. She had piles of different piles of paper all around the floor, and it was a big room. She had a little small meeting table. It was completely covered. She had a filing cabinet, a 4-drawer filing cabinet. You couldn't shut any of the drawers. Things were hanging out of them. There was a cupboard, sort of credenza type thing, over shelving, open shelving, over on the side, and things were falling out of that as well. And it was a disaster. The thing was with Suzanne that she was, well, actually, no, I won't go into too much detail because I'll run out of time on it, but it's talked about in the book anyway, a whole lot more. But what I needed to get her to do was to make some decisions. So we started out, I said, let's start with the desk. And we made about 4 great big piles of paper, piled them all up sort of beside her. I stood next to her and I said, what we're going to do, Suzanne, is you're going to pick up each piece of paper, give me a category, I'll take it, I'll write a label, I'll put it on the floor, and you will keep on sorting. So she, okay, she said, and she's standing there looking a bit glum, I might say. So she picked up a piece of paper, looked at it, and put it to the other side, away from me. Here's me saying, Suzanne, would you mind picking up that piece of paper, please, and giving me a category? It was like it weighed a ton. She finally gave me a category. I took it, put it on the floor, wrote the label, turned back, and there were about 4 or 5 pieces of paper on the other side of her that she hadn't wanted to make a decision about. Well, guys, it took her about 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden it was like something went click in her brain, and she was away. And she started then so fast I could hardly keep up with the writing or the sorting, the placement, because she got into the groove. And it was like a new neurological pathway had opened up. And what she had not been doing was making the decisions, and that's why her environment got so bad. And if you go away with nothing but this one thing, you will have achieved something today. It just transformed things. I have to say that a few years later, when she was so excited, she did not take the day off the next day. She couldn't wait to come into work, found all sorts of things, including quite a large cheque that had been buried. But she rang me a few years later after I'd ended up back in New Zealand to tell me that she was still using the techniques that I taught. Let's keep going back again. So here's a wee example very quickly, just over on the left-hand side of the picture. This actually was an office of mine years ago before we were shifting house. So it looks more messy than what it otherwise would have been. But I wanted to just point out to you the little pieces of paper sticking out underneath the piles on the left-hand side, because that was the sort thing. Now, when you're doing the sorting, the questions to ask yourself are these ones. So what happens if I let it go? Benefit of, so what's the worst thing that can happen, and so on. You can read them for yourself, so I'm not going to read them through. A quick illustration on that one is some years ago I was working for one of the kindergarten associations in New Zealand, and the CEO had a nice office, but it was absolutely crammed full of stuff, and she decided she needed to invest in it, having me down there. So in fact, I worked with not only her, but her two other most senior people. There were agendas, there were minutes of board meetings, there was all sorts of things like that. And we had a big secure destruction bin just outside the door. And when we started and we were doing the sort thing and the touching everything, I said, well, do you not need to keep this? Because she was saying, no, throw, with all these minutes and agendas and stuff. And I said, how come you've got all these here? She said, what's happened, because she'd been short-staffed, she'd go to a meeting, the PA would print off things. She'd go to the meeting, when she came back, she'd just stick it on the shelf. But she said, I don't need to keep any of it because it's all on the computer. And what she hadn't been doing was stopping those extra couple of minutes when she came in saying, do I need to keep this now? So just be aware it might not be the absolute instant you walk back in the door, but if you can, you're going to save yourself a lot of grief. The next thing is this is Kirsten's office again. I showed you a picture of Kirsten's office before with the plant. This on the left is her prior, her beforehand. But I'm going to show you a few photos before and afters here now. So that was Kirsten's before on the left, and that's what it was on the right. She gave me a lovely testimonial saying that it just transformed her life. The thing is, she's still got quite a lot of the things that you can see on the left are there, but they're now upright, they're neat and tidy, and she's got rid of the surplus stuff. And that's the real key thing, actually, guys, I should have mentioned, is once you've got things, actually, let me just go back to this again for a second for the process. So it's the sorting, but when you get rid of the rubbish, but the minimizing is when you're actually going to start putting things back is you sort through each of those piles again. You look at them more carefully. You'll find that there's duplicates there, there's obsolete things there, there's things that you just don't need to keep anymore. And you'll find, just going back again to Kirsten's new, beautiful, pristine thing, that you just will take up less space. So that is such a critical point. Now, here's some more inspiration. This is Nigel's office before. I'm just going to flip through here fairly quickly. This is Nigel's office afterwards. Been noticing the feelings for these things because it's such a kinesthetic experience getting things sorted out. Going back again for Nigel's one, the big heap over on the left-hand side, sitting by the chair and up against that bookshelf. A lot of that was things that he just walked in with and he'd put them down thinking, I'll sort that out later. If you catch yourself saying that, just try to stop and know that this is not a good idea, because that's what will happen. And once he got into that cleanup thing, it just transformed things for him. So we're still in good communication. Okay, this is the teen room before. Funny story with this one. I was back here in New Zealand. I'd lived in Sydney for 4 years, and I'd had a call from Kay and her husband at one point to go and help them sort out their home office in Neutral Bay. But then I think there was a money issue, but they decided not to proceed. And then I got a call some years later, back here in New Zealand by this time, saying, oh, Robyn, we're absolutely completely groaning with stuff. Please, would you come and help us? As it happened, or could you recommend somebody else in Sydney? I happened to be going over to Australia only a few weeks later. At the time, one of my families was living up in Canberra and I was going to look after grandkids. So I ended up spending, it was only going to be 1 day and it ended up being 2 days with them. And it was just transformational stuff. At the finish of it, the morning I was supposed to be catching the plane to Canberra, I got a call from Kay saying, oh, my son wants you to come and help him sort his room out. I'm going, but Kay, you know what the system is now. You could do it. Oh, he wants the expert. So I said, I can give you an hour before I go catch the plane. Off I went. So I helped Rupert. Now, he's an amazing young man. This is quite a few years ago this photo was taken. But that's his before. It didn't take very long because obviously he didn't have a lot of things, but that's his before. Here's his after. Happy kid. I called in to see them again a few years later, or probably about 5 or 6 years later. By now, Rupert was a big, tall, sort of late teens fellow, but their whole house had been transformed as a result of the time that we'd spent together, and his room still looked pretty damn good. Now, here's a garage. This one wasn't somebody I worked with. These photos were sent me by a friend. So that's the before, and here's the after. And the key thing here, guys, it's about the labelling, and it's getting smaller spaces. If you go back to this one for a second, see, everything's just dumped on top of itself. But if you can get smaller shelves, put things in individual places, so it's like with like, that principle again, and you've got things labelled, you can see what you've got. And here's one more little testimonial for you. This is, Roz was a teacher. She had responsibility for the library. She was a DP, I think, the deputy principal, library DP, and she taught a couple of classes. I think music was one of them as well. This is what I'm going to give you this in 2 bites. Dear Roz, the staff and myself, she'd done half of my that's what it was. I was running I ran a seminar, and it was in 2 halves. So she came back on the second evening with the second half of it with this little letter. The staff and myself are very impressed with the area to the north of the foyer. We can now recognise it as your office and not a second-hand dealer's yard containing a treasure trove of bargain hunters. The organisation is awesome, and the definite spin-off is in the process of organisation. We found that caretaker from 1987 whom we thought had travelled overseas. So we all had a big laugh about it, but the thing was you could now actually find her desk. So there are, sorry, go back. Rob, that was the end of that section. Is there anything else, any other questions that people have got?
Just a little question. I think you said you were going to send out the deck. Is that right? Someone's asking, can they get the slides?
Yes, absolutely. Because I know I'm packing a lot of information in here. Yes, you will. As long as it's been recorded. I'm just hoping that it is recorded. Are you able to confirm that, Rob?
Yeah, it is. You're recording and so am I. So
fantastic. Okay,
all good.
Double insurance here, guys. Yes. We should be able to get that to you this afternoon, I'm anticipating. Okay, so now step 4. This is the really important long-term ongoing one. You can see these quick points. So making fast decisions, the first time I've talked about that. Reducing the handling as much as you can. I'm coming back to that. Clear instructions, so they're all quite obvious. The reducing the handling and fine as you go, that two kind of fit together. The key thing is to keep things moving. I'll just expand on that one. It's putting things away as you go really is the key point. And if you can develop a compulsion to closure, that will really help. A system I learned when the children were little was if I just ran around putting things away every time I saw a mess, I would never have done anything. So instead I learned to make a pile of what I called the go out the door pile. And each time I walked out of the room, anything that had to go out of the room, I took it with me as I went. So how can you convert that to an office environment? When I'm working at my desk, if there's something that needs to get put away somewhere that I cannot reach while I'm sitting at my desk, I put it on the floor. That sounds a little bit untidy, but it's not exactly as if I've got lots of people all around me, and most of us are working in a space where we can do that. So I put it on the floor. The next time I stand up, I put that item away or it goes out the door. So it's a compulsion to closure, but it's also a continuation. It's keeping things moving constantly so that things don't lurk. And because when things lurk, guys, they get mold on them. It's keeping things moving. That little list of things to keep moving, I've got it all there for you, so I won't read all of that out. But one that I've seen multiple times with families, the junk in the car. Those of you who don't now have young children or grandchildren coming and going out of your car or their parents' cars, maybe don't have to put up with the grossness of that. But if all the kids had to pick up their ice cream wrappers and their chip bags or whatever else they left lying around, and things were taken out of the car every time, as an example, it would not ever turn into a junk heap. And if you want to know more about good ideas for children, I mentioned it before, getting a group, or did I? Maybe I didn't. Getting a group on parenting time has got lots of little tips for things like that, along with a whole lot of other time tips for parents. Actually, one other parenting tip is what I call Catherine's 24-hour box. It was a tip given me by a teacher called Catherine. She was also a dairy farmer, so she worked in conjunction with her hubby. Part-time teacher, and she had, I think, 5 children, quite close together, not quite as close as mine, but close-ish. And she got sick of cleaning up after people, so she instituted a system called the 24-hour box. Anything that was left lying around would go in the box at the end of the day. If it was still there the next 24 hours later, it got biffed. Well, she pretty quickly educated her family. Here's what I love is really important, and I've had some of my folks on seminars where I've either been face to face or something like this, who have actually photocopied this and kept it up beside their computer to help them with making the decisions when they're working with paperwork or anything. I just want to expand on this one. So if you're up at the top, you can see today's paperwork equals decisions needed. So you've got 2 choices to start with. There's the do it myself or the pass it on. If it's the pass it on, it's delegate. It might be dump it. It might be put it away or whatever. But if doing it yourself, another two decisions, one or the other, do it now or do it later. If it's a do it now, what I apply there is what I call my 1 to 2 minute rule. If I can do something really quickly, I can either read it, act on it, file it, throw it, whichever I need to do of those actions. But it's the do it later things that lurk, and I'm sure most of you agree with this. The other things you say to yourself, if I put it away, I might not see it again or might forget it. And you might be bogged down with the saying, which we've all heard, handle every piece of paper once only. Well, guys, it's a lie. It doesn't work, or it only works part-time, because you can't, if you just stopped and did everything the first time you touched it, you'd end up doing all sorts of things in the wrong timing. So anything that's a bigger project, you can't do that. It's just nonsense. And so those are the things that tend to lurk. and you think, I'll come to that later, and you put it there because it's important and it's down beside you, and then the next important thing goes on, and so on and so on. To get rid of all of that pile of stuff, pileitis, if you like, these 3 steps are critical. First of all, you decide when you need to be doing it. Second, you record it in your diary on the day that you need to start it. And the third one is to place it in an action file, which could be the Q file that I showed you before. So just referencing that again, in the Q file, I've got things like action current, I've got another file called waiting replies, and then what my current projects are. And then at the back, halfway to file 13. So those are the things that I may need later. Anyway, I talked about that one. So, and then on the day that you're ready to start it, you go back and you do whatever of the actions are required. The key point there, guys, in that last little section is the recording in the diary. It's what's two, it's making the decision, but it's recording in the diary. In fact, they're all important because it's then placing it away because you've already done something to make sure you don't forget it. Right, we're getting close to time, so let's keep cracking. I just give you another couple of little examples. This was a school secretary's office. She came on a webinar that I did some years ago. I was doing some paid webinars for a bunch of teachers. This was her office afterwards. And here's the thing, 85% of what you store will never be used again. Do you really need to keep it? So I'll leave you with that. I'm not completely leaving you yet. We've got a couple more things to go, but hold that thought. So I'm going to ask if I can get some help from you. Book reviews are the lifeblood of indie authors, and I've now completely edited, re-edited, updated all of my nonfiction books. They're all available at robynpearce.com. You can see them all there. New covers, the whole box are nice. Because of this particular topic today, I figured that a lot of you might want a bit more information, but I'm just wondering if I could ask you help. If you're happy to just invest 99 cents, US that is, to get a copy of the new version of Paper and Email War and leave me a review, I would be eternally grateful. Because as you probably know, Amazon is such a huge pot with millions and millions of books. And if you don't have any reviews, people don't know you're there. So that would be super if you would be happy to do that. And that is down at 99 cents only for this week, just until the 27th, till next Monday. And if you want preferred paperback, you can get that too through Amazon. Now, what else can I do to help you? I'm going to ask you, what are you going to commit to? So you might like to even put in the chat box, and Rob can read us a few. What are you going to do? So just go for it and tell us what you're actually going to do. And if you would like more help, I've scheduled a follow-up session. I will send you this link today, and that will just be, it'll be a Q&A where we'll have you unmuted, we'll have your screen so that you can all see each other, and I can see you, and I'm really happy to help you. So that will be same time next week if you would like to do that. But just tell us what it is you're going to do. And Rob, are there any more questions? This is my final slide.
No questions. Some comments coming in that are raving about it though.
Oh, thank you. Do you want to select? Well, we don't want to go overboard on this, but is there anything particular that you would like to share?
Saying thanks for the inspiration to get rid of the dross and keep it out really. So, and the book is excellent. Julie's saying, Carol say, yeah, happy to do that around the book, and definitely happy to buy the book and do a review. And yeah, those are there's some more coming in, or is that enough?
Nice. That'll be plenty. Thank you. We're
Great.
pretty much bang on time. So guys, thank you so much for attending today. It's been awesome. And there were a swag of people, like there were about 130 people that registered. So if you're listening post the event, you will get that. You'll be, well, you will have got to the end of it by now if you're hearing me say this. Thank you for joining me one way or the other. And thank you everybody for being on the call today. It's been absolutely stunning. Thank you everybody. And there I am. Oh yes, I can see faces dotted around there. Bye everybody.
There's loads of thank yous coming in. So thank you from everybody, Robyn.
Great.
Well done.
Thank you. Have fun. That's the really big thing, is just know that you're going to really enjoy this, but don't forget to get to, hi Michelle, there you are, all the way from the States. Don't forget to take the photo before and after, because it's so encouraging, and I would love to see them. So keep smiling, guys, have fun, and I'll see some of you next week, anyone that would like to. Bye now. Rob, can you just end the meeting, because my mouse is doing strange things. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
All right, ending now. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.